And we're back. Welcome to the Northern Lights podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Eigenman, joined by
John here.
And we have a special guest, Matt Robidou. Thanks for coming, Matt.
Yes, thanks for having me, everybody.
We are so glad to see you today. Let's dig into it. So, if you don't know Matt Robidou, he has taught our previous class, Drying and Curing, along with Bovida. That was a November 2023 class. Matt, we're happy to see you growing in this industry. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, born and raised Forest Lake, Minnesota, so just north of Minneapolis. 28 years old, so I like to describe myself in my childhood as I was like a 9/11 kid, so I was in kindergarten when that happened, and that kind of had a big impact on my life, and I wanted to really, fill those shoes, and I didn't really know in what way or how, but so my childhood was really military focused, and that at the time, early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s was pretty anti-cannabis, and so the military and cannabis did not go together, and so I was really surrounded by a large group of people who were all not necessarily openly anti-cannabis, but nobody really talked about it. It was just kind of this like mystique, that this forbidden fruit,
I've met your dad. Is he also former military?
No, he's not actually, but I kind of come from a military family. All of my grandparents, at least my grandfathers, were in the military in some capacity. World War II, Korea time frame. And so I definitely inherited a lot of pride from that service, and I kind of wanted to, see what I could do. And so I went into the Marine Corps right after high school. And at this point, I had really only barely kind of touched cannabis. And so I had tried it. I believe it was like 6 months before I went off to boot camp. I tried it for the first time, and I was kind of mind blown because I just was confused, basically. I didn't understand how something that was publicly so bad was, in my experience, so good or so positive. I didn't really notice any negatives. And for context, I didn't really do I was kind of a like goody two-shoes kid where I didn't do anything, like no drugs, no alcohol, until I was 18 years old, almost 19 at that time. So I had a very blank slate, and I just knew that alcohol was making me sick every time I partied with my friends, and cannabis, I could wake up and have a perfectly normal day. And so that kind of, that question of why was that such a good experience stuck with me through my entire military experience.
You were involved in some capacity, like pre-military, high school.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that, because I've never heard of that program.
Yes, so I was in the United States Naval Sea Cadet Corps, which is an 11 to 18-year-old youth development program funded by the United States Navy. So it's really cool. I like to describe it as like Boy Scouts for the military. So I was able to do so many things that you would never be able to do otherwise. Like no civilian would be able to do that, and let alone I was technically still a civilian, but I was a kid, and I was flying in Black Hawks, going on ships. I went on C-130s, like plenty of different bases around the country, all while I was a child, which is just insane. And so that really had a big
it steered your course.
Yes, it did, and it really kind of set the foundation of who I am, which even though I'm not doing the military now, I still kind of have that as my underlying backbone of
your foundation.
Yes, I'm and not necessarily in the ideals aspect, but in the discipline and the structure and the way of leadership. So yeah.
So kind of working off that, with that background in the military, like you said, since you were a kid, how was the transition? First off, actually, where were you stationed during your service? And then how was that transition back into civilian life like?
Mm-hmm. So I kind of bounced around a little bit. I started off, I went to boot camp, Camp Pendleton, MCRD, San Diego. So you bounce between the two bases.
My cousin was at Pendleton for
Nice.
a while. Marines,
Yeah, it's a nice base, but it's also not when you get more into the mountains. It's very
you guys hang in the desert.
Yeah, exactly. It's very like desolate. Yeah, shout out to 29 Palms. Everyone calls it 29 Stumps because it's just there's nothing there. But I went to MCRD for boot camp, and then that stands for Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, and then I went up to Pendleton for my combat training, and then after that I went to the Defense Language Institute, Presidio Monterey, in Monterey, California, and I learned Mandarin there, which was intense. That was a 15-month course. So I always joke that I didn't go the officer route because I needed more school, and then I ended up going enlisted and doing 2 years of school anyways. So yeah.
That was 2016?
Yeah, 2014 to 2016 was all my schooling time frame, and then I arrived in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, October 2016, which was amazing. Probably the best situation I could have asked for. I found a lot of my spirit there. Man, those islands are so spiritual, and the culture is just amazing. It can be very welcoming, and especially when you look into all the underlying unique Pacific Islander cultural aspects, and so yeah, I really carry that. Like Hawaii is kind of my home away from home now, and so yeah, getting out though was a challenge.
Yeah, and I know you developed some hobbies like photography. Did that take place while you were in Hawaii, or did you come? Like I'm always curious about that, and we'll get into Raiden Labs, but before you started growing cannabis, while you were still in the service, like tell us about the hobbies that you were able to find.
Yeah, so I started with photography, and it was an interesting situation. I actually went through a divorce, and photography was kind of my outlet. And I always tell people I if I'm going to do something, I'll do it 110% or not at all. Like I'm kind of all or nothing kind of a person. And that's led me to where I am now. But at the time I was trying to find that thing because I didn't really, outside of, I kind of had lost myself in the military. And so I picked up a camera, and I was always interested in art, but I felt like with drawing and stuff, I always kind of sucked at drawing stuff. I still to this day, I always have like ideas or try to draw it out, and it just looks horrible and compared to what I imagine. But photography allowed me to express that in a way that was precise, because I didn't have to draw anything. I could just imagine that and then find it in the environment and capture that. And I liked the idea of like, what can I fit in the constraints of this box?
Constraint breeds creativity.
Exactly. And so I just would literally go out, walk around. I started with a little Canon Rebel. I think it was like a T3i or something like that. And I just would walk around the beaches, towns, and I would just look. I would be very present and observe. And so that's kind of where the photography side of me started, which then kind of grew, and I ended up getting hit by a wave, and it ruined my camera. That poor Rebel died in that wave, and so I had to buy another camera. And at that point, once again, 110%. So I invested into a Sony A7R III, which at the time was brand new. So that cost me a pretty penny.
How much is that? Like a $2,000?
It's like a $3,000 body, and then the lens was another $2,500.
Wow.
And I also had bought a drone, so I was doing drone photography as well. And so I kind of went really hard into that, got really good at the editing side, started getting reached out to by Hawaii kind of focused Instagram pages, and started getting my work shared. And at one point, kind of my peak where I actually left off at, which I think is, is cool, but also sad. Hawaiian Airlines had reached out to me and asked to use one of my photos in one of their campaigns. Wow. And so that was kind of where I was at. And I actually ended my kind of photography run shortly after that. And that was due to coming back to Minnesota. And let me tell you, Hawaii is easy to take pictures in, like relatively. It's very easy to go out and just take pictures. And sure, that did allow me to develop those skills, but yeah, it was pretty difficult coming back here, and just things had changed. So,
right.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. So you've served in the Marines. You're dealing with a relationship breakup. You've found some hobbies, but you haven't really found your entire self. Where did you start when you got back home? Like where were you at? And feel free to kind of transition into how you found cannabis.
Mm-hmm. So growing up around the military, I thought that the military was going to be my entire, like that was my career. I truly believe that up until probably halfway through my time in service. I was fully dedicated to giving my life for this country, truly. Like I, to be honest, I can't say the same now because I've gone through those changes. But back then, I was a different person, and yeah. So getting out was a very hard challenge. I also came from, my job was inherently difficult because everything I was doing within the signals intelligence space was top secret, and so I couldn't share anything with anybody. So no one really knew like what I was doing, and I didn't even know half the time what I was doing because what I was doing was top secret. So it's like this pipeline of uncertainty, and so all I knew is that I wanted to get out, and I wanted to find something that what everybody says is like that you the whole find your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's true to the full extent because work is work and it's hard, but it makes it a hell of a lot easier to digest and do those things when they're worth it. Anyways, I get out and I'm literally lost. Like I you can ask my wife. We have known each other since we were 13 and 11, and so she was very well aware of like who I was and who I was, what she thought I was going to be. And so that form of me that kind of got chewed up and spit out by the government was not who not only I wanted to be, but nobody really recognized that. I was very broken, and I had no direction. And the military is, you can ask any veteran and they'll tell you that it's kind of a fire hose effect of information right before you get out, and then they just kind of discharge you, and it's like getting sucked out of a spaceship into like the void of space where you're everything's normal, and then all of a sudden you're just in this complete scary environment where everything's uncertain and quiet.
Just floating.
And exactly, and I know a lot of people go through that, and that's why a lot of veterans go through that kind of 1, 2, 3 year transition period where they don't really know exactly what they want to do, because the military instills such a different way of thinking about everything, and it's helped me in a lot of ways, but also hindered me in a lot of ways. And so getting out, I was on different medications for anxiety and all that, and
who do you where's the doctor? Like you go to the VA, I would imagine, right? But like, what is like? Most people don't know what that means. Like, take us through the military pharmacy in a sense.
Mm-hmm. So basically, when you get out, you have to, and that I actually was prescribed these pills by like a Fairview clinic doctor, and that was because initially it takes time to get into that VA ecosystem. VA is essentially Veterans Affairs, so the government has a branch for covering all the medical needs for service disabled veterans, and so you need to have service connected disability to utilize those services regularly. And the problem is when you get out, you have to then fight and prove that you have issues that you need the government to understand and validate that are connected to your service. Mm-hmm. And that takes a long time and a lot of effort. And for me, being broken spiritually and mentally, and physically, it took a while to get that rolling. and a lot of kind of fighting. So you really get into this kind of ecosystem of you feel kind of just like another, I don't know, just like another number in a sense. There's so many people that they go through there, and I understand that, but and I do want to say that the Minnesota VA is probably one of the better VAs. I haven't been to many others, but I've had no like truly negative, inherently negative experiences. It's just that their service is kind of it's not tailored to like, oh, you're paying for this, so you should get a priority. It's you're just another person that's earned this, so it's a different kind of take on it. And so, at one point in my psychiatry time frame, I was told that cannabis had no medicinal value, and at the time, I was using cannabis for medicinal value, and I was like, okay, you have a doctorate, I have nothing. But this is helping me in some way, and you're not even acknowledging that. Like, you don't have to know that it's like how it's exactly helping to understand that there's something there. And so that fueled my interest and even further into the cannabis space. And to be honest, at first I started growing more so because it was like I can save money. You know, it wasn't much of a thought, and that was 4 years ago in 2019.
What were those first grows like?
Pretty hard. I started with autoflowers, which, for any of you who don't know, autoflowers are essentially like timed. You only have a certain amount of time before they're done. So if you do not know what you're doing, you're probably going to get pretty rough results, as in low yields. So my first grows were, I thought I was kicking butt, but realistically to where I am now, it was pretty big difference. But I kind of took on the philosophy of experimentation for every grow. So I wasn't trying to find the right process. I was trying to find just simply what can I change to make this better every time. It was how can I understand when things go wrong. So I started like letting things get messed up in certain plants to watch them, and that bred more curiosity and I started reading a lot of literature back then, and this was at a time where I hadn't really started college yet. And I was just reading. It was kind of like, THC is known to provide and then a bunch of science, like different numbers and terms, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. And then just continue, so it was that frustration of like, why can't I understand this? That led me to kind of pursue that plant science route.
Yeah. So you're a full-time plant science student at the U of M. What has the program been like, and how have you been able to apply that information? Like you said, at first you were just doing grows, kind of being like, still a scientist, but now you're on that degree path. And what have you learned from that you've been applying?
Yeah, so it was really cool to kind of go to school in this kind of the way that I've done it has been really effective for me. Mm-hmm. And that's been everything that I learn. Think of like a filter, right? It's like I'm filtering everything through the question of, does this apply to cannabis? So literally everything I've been learning is like, does it apply to cannabis? And it's splitting into two directions, yes or no. And I'm focusing a lot more on the yes stuff than the no stuff. And so I know compared to my classmates, I'm a junior now, I'll be a senior next semester. And I probably know a lot less about flowers and as in like petunias and trees and that as my classmates, but nobody, at least yet, has been able to come up to me and hang with me or surpass me in the cannabis side, and that's because I've only been looking through it. Like, it's so specific. And starting the business has been really the enabler for that, because I've been able to take what I've been learning and apply it to an actual operation, and then have those connections to my professors to talk and ask questions and all that stuff. So far, it's been really good. Like, honestly, I'm impressed with the program. I think a lot of people, including myself, haven't taken advantage of all the potential that degree can provide or that path can provide. There's so many different like networking opportunities.
If somebody wanted to follow in your footsteps and try to get a degree so focused in cannabis like you're doing, what would be the 1, 2, or 3 tips that you'd tell an underclassman or someone going to college soon? Let's say if somebody's listening, how could they do the Matt Robidou degree?
Mm-hmm. So right now, I mean, you have to essentially have that filter on for cannabis, and that means giving up a lot of information that is irrelevant. And the problem is that if we don't have a subject matter expert kind of path right now, and to be honest, I don't know, what that even looks like in the future. Whether there's going to be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 level, as in higher level classes focused on cannabis, I don't know. In terms of the timing right now, it looks like if I keep going, I might be the one to help with that.
To teach.
Because there's nobody qualified, willing, or able to do it.
At the University of Minnesota.
At the University of Minnesota. And so, I mean, I would say you're going to have to get used to reading a lot. That's the hard part is I didn't go through a program to make me an expert in cannabis. I created my own program for myself, which was the kind of unique aspect about it. And that was, once again, a lot of practical application. So growing while you're going to school, which you can do now legally. And the other is being able to read the literature like while you're going through. Because for me, it was I had a lot of the knowledge already there. It was more learning the why behind it. So I already knew that cannabis, with cloning, like auxin is a important hormone that enables for root growth, but I didn't know why that was or how it worked. So when we started to talk about auxins, I was already familiar with the practical application of that and what it looks like. It's just now understanding the scientific description of what's going on and being able to like understand that is really the true goal of someone that's trying to become an expert in the field. And I mean, for a third one, I would say network, because you need people that are backing you, because in cannabis right now, a lot of people want to do it, but no one's really like, there's not many people willing to actually undergo that like pioneer route. So having a good network to help you forge that path is a big bonus. Talk to your professors, talk to people in the industry, and that'll really get you to where you want to go. Because I still don't even know exactly where I'm going, but I just know that I have a really good group of people kind of help pushing me towards that goal. So
I really like what you said about just keeping that cannabis filter on, because I feel like current college students can do, like if you are in school right now, like, and you want to work in cannabis, you can do that same thing where it's like, oh, this applies, and just building your memory bank of like, what can I do after this? That's awesome.
Exactly.
Man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Great answer. We'll be right back.
Hey, Tanner.
So I got my seeds. You ready to grow some big plants?
I am.
Do you have your seeds? Bam! Dude, you don't need seeds that big.
But I thought we were growing really big plants.
Well, yeah, but you can just use regular seeds. I mean, come to our class March 18th. We got it 6:30 to 9. In fact, Dr. Dabbs, Raiden Labs will be out there. They're going to teach you how to grow big plants, but just with regular seeds.
Oh.
Yeah, come on down. mncannabiscollege.org /grow big. Get your tickets today. You can grow some really big plants with really regular seeds.
They don't need to be the size of quail eggs.
Okay, Matt, so you own and operate Raiden Labs. Can you tell us a little bit more about what motivated you to start that up and about some of the major projects you guys have been focusing on?
Yeah, so I learned a lot about leadership throughout my time from when I joined Sea Cadets at 11 years old, 12 years old. all the way up through my Marine Corps time. And I kind of felt like I really knew how to create an environment through that leadership that would be conducive to, I guess, happiness, to respect within the entire organization. And I always had really good results from my leadership throughout my military time frame. For context, I had reached the highest rank in my Sea Cadet program. So I was leading 70 other kids. And then when I would go to trainings, I would be the highest ranking at that training. So I would be with 200, 300 different kids, and I would be in charge of making sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. So I had a lot of good validation from that time period, as well as the Marine Corps.
I'd love to see clips of you at like 17, just
Drill and
bossing people around.
Yeah, and I was that, I don't know, I just was that, like, I always pursued that leadership style of, like, you should feel comfortable, but also respect, you know, your leadership. Like, that was my goal. Is like, I didn't like the authoritarian style of, like, being rude or whatever. Like, that's a common leadership style that I see, and I just hate that. And so the biggest thing was, like, I got out of the Marine Corps, and I told myself I'm never working for anybody again. That was which I ended up working for my wife, by the way. So I don't think that counts. But
Counts for her.
So I guess.
Well, I mean, let me fast forward you, right? Like, so 2023, Canada Connect 2, Raiden Labs is there. Then Raiden Labs comes out at, like, the legalization event, puts out a dope recap of the legalization event, and, like, all of a sudden it feels like you're on the scene. Mm-hmm. Like, first week of August, Minnesota Cannabis College Summer School. You and I have a long conversation after the summer school program, and it feels like you've just hit the ground running since July. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's more to it from before that, but, like, looking over the last 6 months, like, what have you been working on, and what do you hope to be working on?
Yeah, so this is the exciting part, because I did not expect any of this, the business ventures and opportunities that I've been able to capitalize on to be even a possibility. But I started with the focus on cultivation, so that was the number one priority within Raiden Labs, was cultivation, understanding cultivation and being able to apply it at the highest level, and having science-backed data for decision-making, rather than just going off of what the legacy market has classically been, which is someone's observations, albeit they're really great observations, but that the community wasn't able to move up to that next level because of the whole legalization aspect. And now we're at that point. So really the science-backed for everything really is what we're doing, is, like, that's kind of our core mantra, is, like, science-backed. Like, I'm not telling you what I necessarily think is the best that's my goal, is if there's a fact out there, if there's evidence, we want to be able to go by that evidence and use that as our ultimate, like, justifier for action.
And that can get you far in a very vibes-based industry,
Yeah.
like you said.
Exactly. And on top of that, that's kind of led into consulting, and more on the side of, as of right now, more on the side of essentially the cannabinoid chemistry, and the neuroscience and all that. And that's actually where a lot of my foundational knowledge was in understanding that. And, that's why I went down the chemistry route. So being able to provide formulation services, and then with the long-term goal, being able to help essentially a large facility push their numbers up a few percent, push the profits up a few percent, because you likely are not able to do that with simply observations, right? Like, it's being able to understand that science and apply it. And then we've now moved into media. So kind of that's a joining of my passion for creating content that kind of resurfaced from the past. I could have sold that camera a long time ago, and I didn't, and I held on to it because I was like, I know I'm going to start a business. I know that I need a good camera, so might as well have that on hand. And so it's starting to pay off now. where we're kind of trying to, for one, document the rise of the Minnesota cannabis industry. And we're doing that by going to a bunch of events and different businesses and talking to people that are in the scene and in not only the cultivation, but sales, glass, right? Like different cultural aspects, and kind of documenting that. And we're just now entering the space of essentially product highlights. So a lot of the marketing in cannabis right now is from traditional marketing practices, which don't necessarily all apply to cannabis consumers specifically. They want to see different things than just your standard marketing. And so we kind of want to be able to apply that by letting companies speak for their product in an orderly manner. And then finally, the products. So the products is what's been the final culmination of a lot of work. 3 years in the making. We finally are very close, a month or so away from launching the Raiden Labs gummies, which is badass because it's taken so much time and effort. And I could have done it I could have sourced everything pretty quickly, but I wanted to do it all myself and create this from like a true seed to sale product. And that's exactly what we did, working with local partners to, create a true Minnesota grown and produced product. We're really excited to share that with everybody soon.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
It's going to be exciting. We'll make sure to mention it when it comes out.
Yeah.
And, I see some similarities between photography and like playing around with the limitations of a camera, maybe the editing software, as well as like the limitations of the plant, playing around in the dirt, kind of taking that hobby like in curiosity and inquisitiveness, and then applying it to getting your hands dirty, sort of feeling like I got to build myself up from the ground up. I got to start over.
I really love how you wrapped them together in the end, where it's like, I'm not going to sell my camera. I never know.
Yeah.
And now here you are, where you got both passions coming together in a great way.
Yeah.
And
Unexpected, but it's working out good.
Yeah, we're proud of you, man.
Thank you.
The August 1st comes around and you're legally allowed to start growing plants. Can you tell people about your approach to growing one really, really big plant?
Yeah. So for anyone who hasn't seen, which I haven't shared too much about it, and that's for the sake of this class that's coming up. So I wanted to express how you can really flex that plant limit. So we only have, we're allowed
flex.
Right. We're allowed to grow 8 plants total, 4 plants in veg, 4 plants in flower. So when people hear that, they think, okay, 2 tents, I'm going to do 4 plants in each tent. And that's what they're going to do. And they're going to grow them out. And, and so I kind of had the idea of like, okay, well, we need to be able to maximize this. And this was from the beginning. I basically planted a seed on August 1st and grew that out for around 4 months, which is just, roughly 3 to 4 weeks longer than traditional for a grow. And I was able to pump out around 550 grams from this 5x5 plant in a 3-gallon pot. And I'll have pictures, and I'm actually going to bring to the class, I'm going to bring essentially the stem skeleton of this plant that's just gargantuan, and kind of, stress that, because instead of doing 1 tent with 4 plants, you could do 4 tents if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
And maximize that process.
Just don't weigh it.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is, you don't need to grow more plants realistically. Like, no one, unless you're trying to offload stuff, which, you're donating a bunch, whatever, like, there's really no reason to do that. And so with this class, we're going to show you guys how to, maximize your plant count and, hopefully as close to a pound as possible. I think that's a little hard pressed to just expect that right off the rip, because
1 pound plants, folks.
right. I was kind of, that was like a culmination of my knowledge. That's what I kind of viewed it as. It's like, that was like my, you know, if I can imagine, okay, this is what it's going to look like, and get it to within a few nth degrees of that, then that would be success. And you know, I had a minor hiccup, which was more on the lighting aspect, because I was hand watering every day. So yeah, other than that, I mean, it turned out really, really good. And it's more of the understanding how to train and manipulate the plant that allows you to do that.
The class that we're talking about is March 18th at the Wilderness, featuring Raiden Labs and Doc Dabbs. Matt's going to lead the presentation. He's already working on it. It looks phenomenal. We're putting it out more and more every day, but this is kind of a cool opportunity, because I know you look up to Doc Dabbs, but you're really taking like a feature role in this presentation, and he's going to be there to add in and answer questions. But I know you look up to him, and I know this is going to be a great class.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And for context, Dr. Clement Dabney was probably, I think, he was the very first person that I met in the industry, and that he came to the U of M's one cannabis science class that we have, which covers everything. It's not like cultivation or anything. It covers a lot of different things. It's a very well-rounded class, but it kind of relies on guest speakers. And Dr. Dabney was one of those speakers. And we happened to take a little stroll out to the hemp crop that Dr. Tom Michaels was working on at the time. And while we were walking, no one was talking to Clement. And I was like, I need to talk to him, because I am, I'm the most serious out of all these people, clearly, if no one's taking this opportunity. And so I jumped in there and grabbed his email, grabbed, a little bit of his attention, and expressed to him what I was doing. And, a year later, me and him are now working on some projects together. So it was a long time coming. Clem is incredibly busy, and he's doing a million things. Him and I are kind of similar in that sense. But yeah, I'm just really glad to kind of have that come full circle.
Yeah,
finally.
Absolutely. And just looking ahead to the spring and summer here, like, how else are you working with the U of M? Are there any things you've got on the horizon that you can shout out or highlight from the U of M's perspective?
Yeah, so there's quite a bit. I think the U of M is finally starting to take notice of the cannabis side, and the average person would I would hope they would think, come on, hurry up, U of M, like, it's already legal. The hemp's been going on for what, 5-6 years now, and we still don't, like, I'm 6 years later from that moment, and we could have technically been doing some research then, and I'm still the first one.
I mean, Clem jokes about having to carry those gun safes in the back of the car just in case they came across any feral hemp.
Right, exactly, yeah. So I think a lot of it is still in stigma. So we are working on a lot of things, though. Like, a lot is on the pipeline.
I saw they have two, from the Cannabis Research Center, they have 2 current studies ongoing right now. Just one studying like the effect or THC in the workplace, like how it's viewed, and others studying like ecological effects.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So we and precisely. So we don't have many. Specifically, the way I can do research is in the plant science field. So if it has to do with plant growth, my specialty my degree is agroecology, but which basically means that I'm very well rounded within plant science. I'm not a geneticist, but I'm not a horticulture. I'm kind of a little bit of everything. And then through my graduate program is where I'll start to kind of niche down into areas, which right now I'm leaning towards physiology. And my mentor, Dr. Nathan Ahlens, he is a lighting expert, recently got hired at the U of M and just got his PhD from Cornell like 2 years ago. So he's kind of leading the way We got some.
He's leading with lettuce.
Yes, he is. He is, and that's what he did his PhD on, for context. But he's very interested in cannabis, and so I'm kind of building. Think of it as like I'm building a team of cannabis-focused researchers who this isn't going to be their primary focus. It's my primary focus, but they're on board with what I'm doing. So they're essentially look at it as like a committee. This is what I'm working on. Monthly meeting, discuss. Get help from them, as in Dr. Adrian Hegeman in the biochem lab. He can do any chromatography I need, mass spec, all that. So like basically tapping into this team of people who have not only a knowledge base, but the ability to tap into resources and utilize that, multi-million-dollar equipment. And so we're building towards that physiology side of things for tackling that research.
Why physiology?
So that's the specifics, is that that's what hasn't been done at the U. So the U of M's doing industrial hemp breeding. The U of M has done these studies that are more on the medicinal, social side of things. Right? But within plant physiology, that is this part that hasn't been done yet. Let's grow this and see how it grows in a controlled environment. And applying the light aspect is really the kind of cherry on top. And that was based on, fate circumstances. I could not have asked for a better, more qualified mentor, which is Dr. Nate Ahlens, being able to facilitate that light category and impart that knowledge on me and help me build all this. And he's just a great researcher, and he's got a really, hopefully long and prosperous career ahead of him. And so like I said, the physiology is where the growing markets are at for that, like I was talking about earlier, that optimization. If the observations from the legacy market have gotten the grows to 90% optimized, that's where we got to get that final 10% down. We got to figure that out. And so there's a lot within that space to unpack. And my particular focus within physiology is trichome morphogenesis. So looking at how glandular trichomes grow, what affects their density, genetic factors, environmental factors. And I've been essentially writing a series of papers that kind of build into that. And so what my graduate school studies look like, hopefully if everything goes well, is kind of a series of papers that are all in this same general but yet specific category of cannabis that are building on top of each other over, by the end of it, it would be 9 years of my research and time and thought process going into this giant, massive understanding of cannabis trichomes. And like I said, going through school and doing all this, that's where the uniqueness comes. And so future horizons are, hopefully we're going to get some cool, useful data, useful more than cool, but it's cool if it's useful.
For sure.
So, and then being able to apply that to not only the Minnesota cannabis industry, but ideally to the global industry, and start improving how we grow this plant. So, and lighting is, just want to preface this, but lighting is very important because it is the single most negative contributing factor to cannabis in the industry. We're using a lot of energy, and therefore it's increasing the whole carbon footprint of grows. And so the idea is, if you can better understand and manipulate lighting, you could then lower energy levels for the same effect and get and just save that money and thus use less energy, thus contribute in a more positive way to the overall economy of the world.
God, I love that.
Yeah. I think Matt's unique approach is really going to go far in this industry.
Yeah, like I was going to ask, though, with you breaking boundaries in the parts of cannabis you're focused in, is there any other research you see around the country, around the world, that you found, you're not exactly focusing on, but you find super interesting and would like to share with us here?
Yeah, so I've been digging into a lot of the cannabinoid research recently. And it's been interesting because there is not the most so with studies you need depth. You need like the more sample sizes the better. With sample sizes often comes more money, you need more funding, more sample sizes, more funding. And cannabis is naturally struggling to get that funding when there's the stigma, and a lot of universities are funded federally, which if you don't get, it's not even that the federal government needs to provide that funding. It's that it's kind of like pissing off your parent in a sense of like they're giving you all your sustenance and then you're like getting some little snacks from your aunt. And they're like, quit giving them that. Like that's kind of that relationship where the government, they're worried about the federal government cutting funding based on pursuing technically illegal interests. And so there's kind of that disconnect there. So yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. And wrapping up today, Matt, where can people find out more about you?
So right now we're on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Those are the kind of primary three. Raiden Labs USA. We also just started our Raiden Labs media account, which will be posting shorts from this summer. We filmed the entire summer's grow, so we'll be kind of uploading different educational bits from that. And look for the website soon, RaidenLabsUSA.com. And I think that's it.
Come out to our March 18th class and come see Matt in real life or on the live stream. He's got a lot to share.
Yes. Yeah, come out to those classes March 18th and April
15th.
April 15th.
With Bovida.
With Bovida, we're doing the dry and cure class. Second and first is the how to grow a really big plant. Hope to see you guys there.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Matt.
Yes, thanks, guys.